Alright, welcome back. Today we're going to start on the outside walls. I decided that since I laid the Filon on the bottom side of the flooring, that we're going to go ahead and do the outside walls in Filon. So that's what we're going to do. I have my template laid down, and I have my Filon sheet spread out, and I've laid my side wall on top, and I've got a line around in which I'm going to go ahead and trim this, get it to fit, and then I'm going to make me some alignment points that I can attach to my template so I can line up my 1/4 inch on the template, and then put the Filon on, get it clamped down, roll it back. We'll get the adhesive sprayed on, and then we'll roll that down and press it out, do the other side, and we'll do that to both walls. So that's what our plan is. Let's get started. So I covered the floor of my trailer with a cloth to help protect that. I also laid down a couple of 2x4s underneath to support the template. Then I laid my template down on top of that, and then I laid my Filon down, and then I've got my sidewall. And I went around and marked where I want to cut the line. I'll probably cut right in the middle somewhere here, and get it as close as I can so we can keep the trimming down to a minimum. So we're going to get set up for that, which we are set up for that. So let's go ahead and get this thing trimmed, and then we'll get it on top and get ready to fold it back and spray some adhesive. Now, as I mentioned in the video when we did the Filon for the flooring, to cut this I'm just using a straight pair of tin snips, so it's not a left or right, it's just straight. I've got my mark where I want to cut my Filon, and so it's just a matter of setting it on there and just slowly take some nips all the way around. Cuts pretty easy, cuts pretty good. And then once it's all trimmed out and we get it fastened to the plywood, then we'll take a router around the edge and trim this Filon next to the plywood, and it'll be a nice tight fit, nice and straight, and it'll look good. Let's see how fast we can cut this. Record time. Alright, so we have our Filon trimmed around a 1/4 inch. We just went around real quick. It's not the prettiest sight, but it is trimmed within about an inch, inch and a quarter all the way around, and that's close enough. And now our next step is to make some blocks. We're going to make some alignment points. So I'm going to fasten on here, come up about 5/8 of an inch, and I'll put some tabs around the perimeter of the template. Then I can set the 1/4 inch in there, and that'll lock it in place on the template. Then I'll be able to put the Filon over top of that, and it'll be all lined up, so when I go to trim around the template, the 1/4 inch will be lined up with the template, and we'll have a nice clean cut of the Filon to the corner, to the edge of the 1/4 inch plywood, which is what we want. So next step is to cut our blocks and get those points set up. Okay, now that we have all of our blocks cut and we've got the right height, we're going to take and attach these little blocks on top of our other blocks. We'll put a little glue and throw a staple on it, and that'll attach to the bottom here, and it'll leave a lip right here on this edge so that the 1/4 inch will butt up to it. And we'll put these in places around the template. That way when we go to line up our 1/4 inch, it'll butt right up against these blocks all the way around, and then we can clamp everything down, and then we can get our Filon on top, spray our glue, and then go ahead and get that set. So our next step right now is need to attach our little blocks onto these blocks, get those ready, then we can attach them to our template. So have your stuff cut and get them glued up, stapled, and then we'll get them onto our template. Just like so. Now about the only thing I can say to watch for is if glue squeezes out here in this corner, then you want to take a scraper or a tool or something and make sure that you get the glue out of here, because that's going to sit up against our template, and we want that as flush as we can, because if it sticks out, then our template's also going to start, 1/4 inch plywood's going to stick out. So we want to make sure that that's tight and flush up against our template. In order to do that, make sure that that crevice is cleaned out. Alright, now we have all of our blocks cut, and we're ready to start attaching these to our template. And I've took the liberty of marking each one with numbers 1, 2, 3, 4. And the idea behind that is when I fasten them onto my template, I'm going to drill a hole, pre-drill holes into my blocks, and I'm going to drill through my template, and I'm going to use 1-inch drywall screws and attach the block to the template. Then when I flip it over to do the other side of the outside wall, then I just take my block, turn it over, and I can use the same hole and fasten the block to the template on the same hole. When I take my blocks, place them where I want them, we're going to do them about like that, somewhat spaced apart, and then when I turn them over, then I can line up number 1 with number 1, number 2 with number 2, number 3 with number 3. That way everything lines up every time, so if I decide to build another one, my template's already made, I have my blocks, and I know exactly where they need to be fastened to, and I don't have to do any guesswork. Okay, now that all of our blocks are made and we have them numbered, next was to install the blocks. So I have all my blocks installed, and the way I did that is I set it on top, make sure it's lined up with the edge, and then I take a pencil and I mark around the edge, and then I turn it over, line it up with my marks on the edge here, take a clamp, clamp it in place, and then I drill my screw hole, put a screw in, remove the clamp, drill another hole, and put the screw in. So I'd have two screws on each one of my little blocks, and I'll give you a shot of that, what it looks like when you should be done. So out of the 14 blocks that I made, I only used 11. And so I've got each block screwed in place, it's flush with the edge, and I have each one numbered. So when I take the block off and I flip my template over, I can put my block up here and it's going to line up with the holes, and I can fasten it for the other side. So I did that all the way around, and I've got blocks under places over here on each edge. Now the next step is to take the 1/4 inch, put it on top of the template, and then lay the Filon over that. So we're going to take the 1/4 inch, we're going to put it on top of our template, line it up to the edge, and hopefully everything fits nice and flush, and then we can lay the Filon on top. We can get things clamped down, roll back half, and we can start fastening the Filon. So there's probably many ways to do this. This is the way that I'm doing it. It didn't take but about 15 minutes to make all the blocks, get everything fastened down, and well, let's say 20 minutes. And now I'm ready to lock in my 1/4 inch on top of my template. That way when the Filon is in place, then I can remove the blocks and I can take a router and go around the edge, and my Filon should be nice and flush with the edge of my 1/4 inch. Okay, so we've got a 1/4 inch set on top of our template, and it's locked in place and it's nice and tight, so everything is flush against the edge. So when we lay the Filon on, we get that fastened down, then we can remove our blocks, and then we can trim right around this edge. And that Filon will trim right to our template all the way around our 1/4 inch plywood. So we're going to set the Filon in place, we'll get it clamped back up, and then we'll be ready to start spraying. Sweet. So now we've laid our 1/4 inch plywood in place and got everything clamped up. They line up with our marks. Got the Filon on here clamped up for the evening, and then when we're ready to spray, then we'll unclamp and get everything rolled back. But we have a nice tight edge all the way around. So I'm pretty tickled with that. That's going to work out fine. Everything's clamped down, and then we can run a router around the edge of our Filon. Once it's fastened down, we'll have a nice clean edge that matches our template, which will match our inside walls when we go to attach that, and should fit like a glove. Hopefully. Okay, keep your fingers crossed. So this is where you should be. You should be right now working on the outside walls, getting the Filon attached. And then we're going to do both sides, left and right, and then we'll set those aside, and then we'll begin assembling things and making sure things are fitting and trimmed and all that good stuff. So stay tuned.